you know what? I'll just say this. The grocery store gonna get mad at me if I complain about the carts not being returned.
Wait, what?
Like if I come on the podcast and complain about something or talk about something,
Yeah.
am I supposed to talk about no people, places, or things while I'm here?
Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
Hello everyone, how are you today? I hope you're having a really good day so far. If you're new to my channel, my name is Taylor. I come to you from Baltimore City, Maryland, and here on my YouTube channel, I feature content that is generally focused on knitting and spinning. In this week's episode of what I call the Thread to Men podcast, I'm going to sit down and share with you the things that I've been working on in real time. I was not able to upload last Sunday, so I do have the slightest amount of progress to share with you all. Thank you all for being patient with me as I take time to rest. I have been working on this sweater project, as you may well know, and it's done. I have to weave in the ends, but I did have a little bit of a meltdown about this the last week or two. I can't recall when. It was mostly hormonal, but also the fact that I finished knitting a mohair silk blend sweater at the same time we had like a 90-degree day. I was just like over it. I thought I might not even publish this. I thought that I might just sweep it under the rug, say I'm sorry, it's never gonna happen. And after blocking, I did change my mind. So I'd finished the sweater, I tried it on, I was like, it's too small. It's like not even the size it's supposed to be, like according to math and my gauge and everything I calculated and wrote. And I recalled that, it didn't fit because the fabric didn't feel much like my swatch. And I remembered that the yarn I purchased had very likely never been washed. It had looked like it just came from the mill, and it smelled like it just came from the mill. And I knew it just came from the mill after blocking because I had to really wash this a couple times to get the water clear. And anyway, after blocking, the magic happened and the fabric all loosened to basically match my gauge to my swatch that I washed. So I thought I had somehow created something that factually just made no sense. And I, again, spiraled with my hormones and the heat, and it was a rough week. I even had to knit the second cuff like 3 times because I did it wrong the first time, and then I overcorrected the second time, I guess not following my own instructions carefully enough. And then, that contributed to the spiral. The cable does draw the fabric in at the front. You'll see that the gauge to that fabric shifts for that, maybe 4-inch section, but it is exactly where the sweater is at its widest width. So it doesn't manipulate the size of the ultimate garment all that much. And I don't think that had anything to do with my freak out over the size, because it was the sleeves that felt too short. It was the yoke depth that felt too shallow. And then once I blocked it, it fit exactly as I anticipated and as it should measure. So, again, I'm such a perfectionist, and I'm a little bit of a all or nothing personality. I don't like that necessarily about myself. It's just what I've noticed. And even though I wanted this pattern to be the absolute most perfect raglan design that there ever was, there are things that I do plan to tweak in the future when I knit another raglan. This has maybe I will put it on for you because I feel like you're not going to get the full effect unless I do. But it has a very standard crew neck shape. And I like my crew necks to be a little bit wider. It's cropped, and there's no side shaping, but you do decreasing before the bottom hem to kind of cinch it in a little bit so that it has a tiny amount of shape to it. The yoke depth, I think, is maybe a tiny bit deeper than your average garment. It's not like under your arm. It gives you the amount of space that you need to comfortably wear like a natural deodorant and not feel that it's caked into your knitwear. And the sleeves are shaped the slightest amount, just so that they're not too wide when you get to the cuff. And just like the bottom hem, there's a decrease round to bring in the cuff with a little bit of a twisted rib. I am going to put this pattern out into the world because I try to make contributions where I can. And if you're interested in test knitting this design, there will be a link below. I know so many of you have signed up what feels like weeks ago, and I feel like I've fallen short delivering the promise of this pattern to be in testing. But again, I mean, I hadn't even finished the sleeve. I think I either do things too fast or too slow, and I'm a little hard on myself in the process. But if you're still interested in testing, and if you are suddenly interested in testing, there is a link below for you to fill out your details and answer just a few questions. And I will be sending that pattern out to testers within a week. So thank you all so much for your continued support. If you're interested in testing, the cable motif is optional, and the instructions are written in the pattern where they should be if you want to omit that entirely and just have yourself a simple raglan pattern with the same sleeves and rib details, etc. So even though I would love for people to test the cable motif and those instructions, if you want to omit it, you're free to omit it. It's my first pullover design, which is kind of exciting. I do want to make another, but I'm realizing that I actually get more wear. I'm going to take this off now because it's like really hot. I get more wear out of cardigans because you can throw a cardigan over a cute little dress and it won't feel too hot. If you're not familiar with Maryland weather, it's very humid. It's like Florida humidity, and it's hot. I'm excited to report that I cast on a new project. I think this was last weekend. I decided, I didn't even finish my sweater that I've been putting so much pressure on myself to finish, that I was just like, I guess rebelling. And I was like, I'm going to do something just for myself. I'm going to forget any obligation I have to anyone, and I'm going to do the thing I said I was going to do that I don't know I'll ever do if I don't do it right now. And I did not alternate skeins at first when knitting the ribbing, which I sort of regret, but not enough to redo it. And I'm putting this on a longer cable so I can stretch out and show you. That's one reason I love my Knitter's Pride needles, is they have, well, I think every interchangeable needle has different cords you can screw on, but there's these little connectors. I don't know if they are universal to all screw-on sort of cables, but they work for Knitter's Pride. And I'm just gonna throw this on another cable for you to see. I know, you want the pets. This is Star Baby Moonchild. She is such a funny creature. She is the most aggressive animal in our household, but she's also the sweetest, and she's very demanding. I don't know if you've noticed. She's the most demanding. And did I say she's aggressive? I'm using my ring light today. I don't know if you can tell, but it is crazy overcast. It looks like it's about to storm. I have cast on and started knitting the Celeste Tea by Sari Norland. It is a fair bit tedious working the bobbles, but I'm going to try not to complain and instead just get it done. They're not the entire fabric of the project, so I'm just grateful that at some point they'll be finished and then I just get to work in stockinette, which is my favorite fabric to knit. I decided to go with the cable cast on instead of the tubular cast on because I don't hate the way that it looks, and it's a lot simpler to execute, and I was sort of just eager to get started. It looks like it has a very narrow neckline, but it does fit, and it's about the same fit as the raglan I just showed you. And I did not alternate skeins through the ribbing, which I sort of wish I did, because there are some areas where you do see a little bit of pooling of the natural color shift. So I started alternating skeins as soon as I finished the ribbing, and I switched to the larger needle because I noticed that starting to show, and I thought, why hadn't I started this sooner? But I didn't think it important enough to rip back. It's really not all that noticeable, and I feel like at the ribbing it's like whatever. So I'm happy so far with the progress I've made on starting this project. I think that I'm going to try to focus on this as much as I can while I begin swatching for the chevron open back tank top I talked about in my last podcast video. I had picked out my yarn, but I haven't yet caked it, and I'm looking at that giant skein of lace weight yarn I have to skein or turn from a skein to a cake, and it's just a lot of yardage. It's double the yardage of a fingering weight skein, so I'm kind of dreading the process of putting it onto my Swift to cake up into that couple balls. I'm going to hold it together double so that it is equal to the fingering weight that I'm working along with in the project. And because I'm borrowing two colors actually from a current project to execute that one, I really wanted to make some progress on that and use up the majority of what I need to finish that project before I start cutting into my yardage for a second project with the same colors. So I did work a little bit on my bubble cardigan. I'm gonna go get it so I can show you the progress I made there. I have really been enjoying, bless you, working on this. Has been so fun. And just making sure I'm not about to drop any stitches. I think I've made, I can't recall, I think I was just picking up to knit the yellow the last time I showed this to you. So I've only made maybe an inch or so of progress on this. What I intend to do is work the body, measure my ball of orange yarn, which I need for the other project, get a weight on that, execute one of the two sleeves, get a weight on that, find out exactly how many grams I needed in order to finish that sleeve. And then I should be able to incorporate this color into my second project with some confidence that I will have the yardage I need to finish my second sleeve for this project, and I'll know how much I'm able to utilize for the other. I want to know a very clean picture of how much is needed for this before I start working it into my second project, because I can always buy a different yarn. It just so happens that this one I think is really the right color. The yarn store that I purchased this at is no longer in business. I bought this at the Knot House in Frederick, and they're no longer there. So it's not as simple as just running to go get one. And if I can avoid buying more yarn, I would. I'm hoping that this works out. Do you hear that bird call? I hope you can hear that. I have been listening to that bird all morning. I think I'm gonna go outside and see if I can find out which one it might be. In fact, I think I'm gonna take you out to view the garden. I did spend more time in my garden since I've been away than I think I've spent knitting. I'm going to take you all out to view the garden really quick before the sky starts to fall, and I'm going to show you all the progress that Brian and I made in the garden over the last week or so. We fertilized, we power washed, we planted, and I did flip the compost and spread a lot of compost in multiple beds. So I'm going to take you all out there to view that, and yeah, it'll be fun. Welcome to this week's garden tour. It is starting to rain pretty hard, so I'm just going to stand in the doorway. But I will show you what is growing in our garden as of right now. We have a box full of strawberries. There's tons of flowers and hopefully some fruit forming. And just to the right of that, there are some bulbs. We have a couple snowdrops, and I forget the name of that weed. I'm allowing it to proliferate amongst them. I just think it's really an interesting plant. I did plant in front of that some really dark heucheras, and I'm just noticing right now that among those heucheras I had planted a couple hostas I forgot were there. So I think I'm actually going to move those now that they're up, and just transplant them to another area where they'll get a little bit more space. But the garlics are really doing great. Our peach tree does have some leaf curl, and I'm noticing a few leaves dropping. There's some new leaves on the ground you can see there, which is a little concerning. And it's also putting on new growth at the very base of the tree. So it's obviously stressed to one degree or another, but it seems like it's doing okay. I don't know. I'm a little worried about the leaf curl, but I don't know that there's anything I can do now at this point. So it kind of is what it is. If you have any advice for me, please let me know in a comment below. But the garlic's doing great. The blueberries have put on more flowers this year than I've ever seen before, which is really exciting. And between the two blueberry plants I have in this bed, I have a bunch of perennials. Most of them are echinacea, pink and white, and rudbeckias. There's like a brown-eyed Susan and a black-eyed Susan. And then in the back, that taller one there, I forget the name of it. It was recommended to me by Emily Estrada here on YouTube. But the rose bush that I have growing up this trellis, it's a climbing rose, has put on a ton of new growth, and the aphids love this plant. I have gone outside with my roll of scotch tape, or not scotch tape, packing tape, wrap it around my finger and scoop them all up. Every aphid I can find, I try to capture on the sticky side of that tape, and I think I've made a good dent. The goal is to capture 90% of them again and again and again and again and again until you've essentially eradicated the population. But it is a constant battle. Constant vigilance is required. I did spray it down with some neem oil solution, but I try to avoid things because I just don't know how they're going to impact the plant, and you know, whatever works. But they're doing great. I also planted a couple new heucheras. They're those really bright burgundy that pair on either side of that rose bush. I just picked up those last week, which I'm trying not to buy too many new plants, but I thought I would indulge. I was a little down in the dumps, and plants always help, so I splurged on a couple heucheras. They were only $8, which is such a good price, especially because they do get big quite fast. You can buy a small plant, and within the same year, they will become a larger plant. So if you can buy them under $10, I think that's a great price. Even $15 is not bad. I've seen them at my local nursery for like $30, and I just think that is an insane price to pay for a heuchera. But you can propagate them quite easily, which is what I did with this whole row over here. I still have the mother plant in a container over to the side of the house. But you can see that the daffodils in that circle area have really, really taken off. The flowers have since died back, but they're still holding strong. Sometimes they flop over, or the feral cats will kind of lay into them and bust them up, but they're all doing great. And I think the rain has settled down enough that I might take a step out here and show you further back. The creeping Jenny has really taken off. This is a lilac bush I bought on clearance this fall. The leaves are quite bright, and I don't know why that is. It's a little concerning. But I'm really excited for these flowers to open because I love the fragrance of lilacs. These actually don't really smell at all, so maybe that's me, I don't know. Brian was convinced that I would have killed this pine tree, but it's putting on a ton of new growth, which is really exciting. And I told you I spread my compost. Look at all of these pumpkin plants. I think I'm gonna have to move a few of them into my neighbor's yard because this box alone is not gonna sustain all of those, but I think I'm gonna do that tomorrow. I have another strawberry plant here and a rose shrub. I think that I burnt this one a little bit when I applied fertilizer. So a lot of the leaves kind of died back and it looks like it just was a little bit too much. So that's my bad. I'm gonna pull those off to revitalize it one day soon. My nettles did take, if you've watched my video before, you know I was a little worried that they wouldn't make it in the transplant. But I have these 2 bleeding heart plants. These bleeding hearts have been so fun to watch evolve over the spring. I had no idea how much joy this plant would bring me. We also planted 2 other heucheras of this variety and a couple astilbes. I'm really excited to see what color flowers these produce. And I thought that they would really provide a nice contrast in color to this area because we have a lot of lime foliage growing, but they're kind of so dark you don't really see them that much from the kitchen. But the hellebores are really doing great. The flowers are kind of dull. These ones I think are really pretty. I did trim back all of the ugly looking leaves from last year and it put on a lot of new growth. So I'm really happy with that. I know someone did confirm that it's not a bad idea and I followed through with that task. I have a foam flower here that looks like it's bouncing back and some more woodruff. And it looks like this hosta is rising from the ground finally. This plant I planted here and then dug up and it looks like it's still spread. So I'm actually gonna uproot this and put it in a container. I have heard that it is quite invasive, so I would rather have it consume a container than any part of the garden. And I actually moved it to this one here, so I'm gonna fill in the other areas with more of that. These heucheras have really brought me a lot of joy over the winter and spring. They're blowing up right now, and I just like having a variety of the same plant kind of nestled together here. The dark ones are really hard to see against the similar backdrop of the ground color. I cannot wait to cut this grass tomorrow. I hope it'll dry off a little bit before Monday because it does need to be cut. I didn't cut it last weekend and I probably should have. But this pile of snowdrops really surprised me. It didn't do well in the front yard. I think that our soil is just a little less built up. So I moved it to the backyard in the fall or winter and I just really didn't know what to do with it. So I just put it there and I think I'm going to dig it up in the late summer or fall and transplant it to another area. I just don't know exactly where yet, but I think it'll look a little bit nicer kind of amongst other bulbs like tulips or daffodils. And these daffodils, I had no idea how tall they would be when I planted them. They were given to me by my mother-in-law, so I wasn't sure. And I'm not sure I made the right choice in putting them there. I think they would look a little better tucked back amongst the bird bath, but that's the thing with me and gardening. I just don't quite know what I'm doing and how things fill out or how they're gonna do in my somewhat shaded space. Sometimes things stay a little small, sometimes things really reach for light, and it sort of just is what it is. But every year it's evolving and growing and changing. These hostas, for instance, they were nothing like this last year. So I'm really surprised to see them grow so big and be, I don't know, so like healthy looking. They looked nothing like that last year. So now that I know how good they can look, I kind of want to put them somewhere else in the yard. I can see them better from the window. But I'm trying to not move everything all at once. I really do want to give things some place to sort of rest and, you know, settle in to place. But it is so fun to see a garden evolve. We used so much water, well, not so much, it was a relative amount of water to pressure wash the concrete, that I dug a little bit of a moat. So I dug up all these rocks and dug that just a little bit deeper. And I dug a very narrow moat here in front of the grass. And I dug up the edge of the concrete so that water would run off of the sidewalk into the beds. And I even dug it all the way down and to the side of this bed so that it would kind of migrate up towards the other end near this tree here. And just like the other grassy path, I have a narrow sort of like moat here to take it to another little bit of a moat here to bring the water into this bed. I do need to rearrange my little stick border. The cats do disturb it on occasion. And you can see that our soil has a lot of clay. So, you know, that will kind of settle into, I don't know what I'm trying to say. But it has really helped a lot in preventing runoff into the street. So I'm kind of controlling the path of water from our sub pump to stay within the yard. So it doesn't ever go onto the concrete and create any staining of our concrete. And it'll stay and help benefit the plants. In fact, I think that this rose bush is doing as well as it is because with all of our seedlings started in the basement, we're using a lot of water to water them frequently, and that water is kind of evaporating into the air with our dehumidifier, which we have to run regardless of any time of year. It's always running. And that water is frequently being pumped out of the air and into this bed here, pulling that water out of the air and into the garden. And I also dug a moat, I'm not sure if you can see it, in the back of that raspberry bed that connects our gutter system. We have a gutter that drains down and goes under that planter box, under the soil I've built up over top of it, and it comes out right where the raspberries start. And so that moat allows the water to travel down to the other end of that bed so that the water is distributed a little bit more evenly in that area and it benefits more plants. I started some calendula from seed. It's doing quite well. I think it's really going to take off soon. Oh, this is the heuchera mother I talked about providing all the other plants in my garden. She's quite large, and I do need to paint these chairs, but I just have put it off year after year after year. But one day soon I'm going to repaint those babies. And I've been able to grow so many perennials now that I don't know where I'm going to fit annuals except for in this bed here and along the trellises. And I'm going to put a couple sunflowers in this front bed over here because I love having sunflowers in the summer. It's just so fun to watch the birds enjoy those. And it's raining again, so I'm going to go back inside. Thanks for watching.
That is it for this week's episode of the Thread to Men podcast. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you want to find me on social media, my name is Taylor E. Owen on Ravelry and Instagram. You can find me over on TikTok as Taylor Knits. Again, I want to thank you all so much for being here. I hope you all have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and that you take care.
some solid ground. I'm gonna fill this bucket up to the top. Fill this bucket up. I'm gonna fill this bucket up to the top. Fill this bucket up. Take a call with an old friend. Get the guts to start over again. You gotta lose to be ready to win. Just enough to fill this bucket up to the top. Fill this bucket up. I'm gonna fill this bucket up to the top. Fill this bucket up. Gonna fill this bucket up to the top. Fill this bucket up. Gonna fill this bucket up to the top. Fill this bucket up.
Get it, kid.
I'm tearing through the lights till I hit the coast. Watch the sunrise with the Holy Ghost. Taking my time and letting go. I was a child in the Georgia hills. My favorite toy was a tin pail. Turn on the tap and don't let it spill. It was just enough